Muito bem, e de Cabo Verde voltamos aqui a Portugal. No Dicionário Prático de Expressões e Locuções Correntes, a expressão "a união faz a força" aparece descrita com a frase "quando todos ajudam, nada custa". Durante o período da pandemia, as companhias regionais asseguraram grande parte do transporte de passageiros, permitindo o maior controle dos prejuízos de muitas companhias. Agora que a pandemia parece dar tréguas e os passageiros regressaram em força, como é que estas companhias regionais irão fazer frente aos desafios do setor e também aos desafios externos que se aproximam, nomeadamente a crise económica mundial que ameaça ser bem dura? Poderá a natureza de resiliência e capacidade de adaptação destas companhias ser um trunfo para voar em futuros incertos? Ou a fragilidade de não ter uma grande estrutura põe em causa a sobrevivência da aviação regional? Para moderar o próximo painel, que aliás quase podia ser das Nações Unidas. Portanto, temos aqui Grécia, Portugal, Inglaterra e Itália, não é? Falta aqui alguém que sabe lidar disto como ninguém. João Maia Abreu, por favor, és tu que vais moderar. Até já. Gosto muito que venhas a este palco.
Obrigado, Catarina. Obrigado mais uma vez. Thank you very much. Let me start by presenting my panelists, the people who are going to give us pointers and feed us on information that is vital in terms of regional aviation. I start with Clemente Affinito, Vice President of ATR, Martyn Holmes, Chief Commercial Officer of Embraer, Valter Fernandes, CEO of the Portugália Airlines, PGA, and Vasiliki, Christidi, Group General Manager of Sky Express. Thank you very much once again. The role of regional aviation as a feeder for long-haul operation has been asserted due to the adaptability that this operation allows for large airlines. During the pandemic period, regional companies ensured a large part of passenger transport, allowing companies to keep their operations running with reduced loss margins. How will these regional airlines position themselves in the near future, taking into account the sector's growth forecasts on one hand and the expected economic crisis on the other? Let me start just by saying, Clemente, I'll start with you. Yep. So basically, for regional flights, let me start with Vasiliki, I'm sorry. Vasiliki, let me go to you first. In terms of regional flights, COVID was instrumental.
For Sky Express, yes. We grew during the COVID period. First of all, with our existing then fleet of ATR turboprop, we provided the essential connectivity of the Greek islands to mainland Greece because ferries were not there anymore. And during that same period, it was possible for us to access the book orders of the big airplane manufacturers. Thus, we increased our fleet with jet aircraft for the first time, increased our network capacity, grew in size, numbers, personnel, and increased our routes for the first time with an international network as well. But by doing that, selecting the most efficient aircraft, which is the technology that would allow us to consume less fuel, emit less CO2, because this is a cost that you need to take into account. And of course, connecting Greece, because for Greece, connectivity is the most important thing. We survive, we live, and we thrive through tourism. And this is 28% of our GDP. And connectivity is essential for the growth of the Greek economy and the economies of the regions of Greece.
So COVID was the switch to make everyone understand that regional flights were instrumental and should not be disconsidered, perhaps?
Absolutely. It has been proven that with regional airlines and the flights around the regions of Europe being maintained at levels higher than any other segment in the market, we have managed to secure the connectivity of the regions in Europe as an industry. And this is vital for the future of the regions and the future of the airlines as well. These are not small airlines flying small aircrafts. These are real, well-organized carriers flying a variety of aircrafts and a variety of destinations, from very thin routes to commercial routes, and feeding not only long-haul, but bigger hubs in Europe. that support the larger growth.
And we'll go back also, we'll talk to you about sustainability in a while. Valter, I believe and know for a fact that this was the case of Portugália. So COVID was instrumental because Portugália also took a stand and occupied a hole in terms of operations during COVID.
Very true. Good afternoon, everybody. Despite the fact that we have different models, me and Vasiliki and Sky Express, we are more a feeder of the main airline and feeding the hub. We have a similar experience. So we never stopped flying during the COVID. COVID gave us a big opportunity because we are more adaptable, the word that you use, and very, very rightly so. I won't say more resilient, but clearly we are quicker and agile to deploy our operations that were different during COVID than they were before COVID. COVID gave us an opportunity. It's not a welcome opportunity because it created lots of stress throughout the world, but gave us definitely an opportunity. So this part of feeding the hub, we carried cargo, essential cargo. We carried cargo in cabin. We were the first airline in Portugal to put cargo on top of the seats, inside the cabin. We flew to the islands, maintaining connectivity. We flew to Porto, and then gradually, after the easiness of the COVID restrictions, we started to deploy our aircraft. It's a very modular product that we have because you can do 20-minute flights and you can do up to 4.5-hour flights as well. So we start to deploy it even to Africa, places that we never went with this kind of aircraft because the load factors were not there. So to Vasiliki's point, we can have a different role and a very adaptable role on connectivity, but also thin routes when the load factors are not there for a larger narrow body. And it's what we did. And gradually, we are putting aircraft now back to what they were doing before COVID because the load factors increased and we are doing the regular flights. But the fact is, to sum up, we increased from compared 19 to now 50% of our operation. So we are hiring when everybody was basically reducing capacity. So and we basically were very important for the Portuguese communities as well.
And Martyn, so it's a question of perception, isn't it? So if there wasn't any perception of what regional aircrafts and regional flights were doing in Europe or everywhere else, we knew at that time. So there was COVID, and afterwards there was an increase on the perception of people that understood what exactly was the importance, the real importance of regional flights.
Yeah, I mean, perception of what is regional aviation can depend on a multitude of things. I mean, some people see regional aviation as sector length, aircraft that fly shorter sectors. That's not true. You know, over 50% of routes that are less than 500 kilometers in Europe are flown by large narrow bodies. So it's not that. Okay? Is it small regional airlines as we traditionally view in our heads, small 6, 7, 10 aircraft fleets? No, that's not the case. Look at Valter here, look at Sky Express here, there's Vasiliki there. I mean, it is, to my mind, it is those airlines that utilize regional aircraft, be it from ATR, be it on Embraer, aircraft up to like 120 seats, and even that's starting to evolve a little bit upwards. And they evolve that in many different business models, okay? And those business models can be in developing connectivity in like Loganair up in Scotland. You've seen what they're doing in the UK. Or it can be big hub feeding models like KLM City Hopper have now grown to 60 aircraft through the crisis. Valter here, who's adding another 6 aircraft, has grown through the crisis for a multitude of reasons, right? The fact that regional aircraft can be both defensive and they can help grow the business, because when the pressure comes on the business, you've got the ability to fly the right size of aircraft on the right route to make profitable operation when there are headwinds to your operation. Equally, as Valter indicated, when you see opportunities to exploit, you can put the right size aircraft on, go in there, right, with low trip costs, and start penetrating a market before your competitors can. So it gives you flexibility and adaptability in many ways. which gives airlines who have that foresight to build that into the network. And we're seeing that greatly throughout Europe now. I think regional aviation will have more significance and relevance going forward. I think there's sustainability, we'll talk about a bit more on that. But sustainability, not only will the technology come to bear in our space first, but equally, there's going to be regulatory, economic headwinds in the market. There's going to be pressure on passenger numbers, and you're going to need the right size aircraft to deal with that, and the aircraft that can adapt.
Is it the case to say that short distance and small capacity is less in terms of costs?
Yep.
Are we there?
Absolutely, it's less in cost. In terms of sustainability, you're going to see the technology come to bear, whether it's hybrid, electric, or hydrogen. That's going to be, because of the challenges on battery weight or density of hydrogen, you're going to see it on smaller aircraft that fly shorter distances first. That's just a fact of physics, okay? And that's going to be a key part. So regional is going to be very, very relevant in sustainability.
In that term.
Yeah, and then in terms of digitalization, as somebody who's now recently moved to a smaller city than I used to be in Amsterdam, there's a dispersal of where people live. So there's going to be a need for second-tier and third-tier cities, towns to connect more than ever before. Okay, and then you've got regionalization. We've seen this like inshoring of businesses around after globalization hit some rocky patches in the last few years. So I do think the future will need regional aircraft to be more at the center of being able to make the whole economy work.
And Clemente, so picking up on what Martyn was saying, in terms of regional flights, ATR also has a part in that. Very recently also. So what is the main purpose of ATR in this relation?
The main purpose of ATR is connectivity. Connectivity is connecting people in a sustainable way. Sustainable is a word that has been used in many meanings lately. Above all for the environment, but sustainability means also in a cost-effective way. So if ATR has been through all crises from September 11 to the COVID and emerging always stronger than before, it's because the operating costs and the fuel consumption of these aircraft are unbeatable. And when you talk about the fuel consumption, you talk about the cost of the fuel, cost of the ETS scheme. We may touch a word about it before, after, and obviously we are talking about CO2 emission. When you are consuming less fuel, we are emitting less CO2 at the same time. But being back to the connectivity, the aircraft is very versatile, so it's not only for network connectivity for major hubs like in Lisbon or like in Madrid or Oslo, Amsterdam. Is really connecting people for going even to work on a daily basis. We have an example in Sweden, where we have an airline that is connecting daily the peripheral cities to the main city, to Stockholm, for people who is going to work there 1, 2, 3 days and be back home, and having his breakfast on the aircraft and his dinner the very same day or the day after home with the family. This is connectivity. Connectivity is not having an aircraft landing in an airport twice per week. Connectivity means having somebody providing you a mean to go home earlier if your meeting is finishing earlier. And that was probably what TAP was doing with the ATRs a couple of years ago, before the COVID, with the Ponte Aereo, Porto Lisboa, where people were showing up in the airport with a ticket and saying, "Where is my next bus?" Oh, sorry, ATR.
Vasiliki, and specifically in Greece with Sky Express, during COVID, you very much picked up on things that were stopped. So the boats were stopping and planes took a stand. So picking up a little bit on Clemente was saying, you almost did, the connection between islands and the main continent was done by you.
Yes.
And that connectivity was relevant, of the most importance at the time.
Absolutely, but Sky Express was doing that for a long time, not with a single ticket as the example of Porto, but flying 14 daily flights back and forth Athens to Santorini, which is the most popular destinations. But when
How many flights do you have to Santorini a day?
14 with an ATR
I think that's
72.
an important number, 14 flights a day.
So this is connectivity. And then if you want to pop into an aircraft and go to another island on the other side of Greece, you can do that by connecting tail to tail, so enabling the connectivity between the islands. Otherwise, you will need to get an 18-hour ferry connection, 10-hour ferry connection, 8-hour ferry connection. And we have important academia based in the islands of Greece. So very important hubs of knowledge that connect to mainland, connect to other cities. They do marine studies, they do very important environmental studies for sea conservation. And so it is important to perceive connectivity as a way not only of growing the local economies, but of getting people out of the major cities that are becoming increasingly monstrous. So if you enable people to move, to work, to study, and have the balance of life that they can, then they can get out of the big cities. This will then release the tension on the housing problem, on the job problem, on different problems. And this is it not an important thing for Europe to ignite regional growth? Don't leave any region behind. This is the motto of the European Union, right?
Decentralized.
It's not about the member states. It's about the regions of Europe.
Yeah.
So you cannot leave regions behind. And you leave them behind when you are losing their connectivity. And in that sense, in certain areas, absolutely, you need an aircraft. Because, not only because it is the most efficient way, but it is the fastest, it is the easiest way to connect people. You don't put someone in a 10-hour ferry and then say, I connected you, because then you need 1 day to go, 1 day to work, 1 day to return, which is effectively don't move. Mobility is, again, one of the pillars of the European Union. You need to facilitate mobility, because this is how you grow as the economy.
Mm-hmm. And with 14 flights a day, you can always leave at the time you want, and
exactly.
That's connectivity,
exactly.
as Clemente was saying. Valter, in terms of regional flight and importance, we also have to look for the European hubs. Mm-hmm. So we have to look within, but abroad. How much is that important for Portugalia at this moment?
Well, it's our business model, basically. I think there's space for everybody, right? So we have products in the regional sector on the aircraft that range from less than 50 seats to up to now regional aircraft go up to 140 seats. So it's a broad range, and there's space for everybody. So we connect, it's true, we connect big hubs with our regional aircraft, but we also serve smaller communities. So for us, our business model, it's true, is connectivity from big hubs. And I would say a vast majority of our passengers, way above 50%, is they're connecting. Mm-hmm. So we're feeding the long haul. But again, we cannot. The big hubs are important, but with COVID, people also lost the interest of staying long times in big commercial airports. So they like the point-to-point. It's true. But you can't have point-to-point indefinitely.
Not only connectivity, but faster connectivity.
Exactly. And so for that, you need the frequencies. And for that, sometimes you cannot have bigger aircraft because it's basically, you need the frequencies so you don't have big connecting times. So again, there's space for everybody, point-to-point, feeder-to-feeder, smaller executive smaller regional jets to bigger regional jets, turboprops. I think it's an interesting market. It's a very interesting market.
And in terms of sustainability, how does it comes in your operation at this moment?
Even more so, because the new technology and that will be right around the corner. It's now starting with SAF, so Sustainable Aviation Fuel, and you will start with turboprops first, and then small jets, and then move up the ranks. And for sure, again, regional aviation or regional aircraft will be the first to have 100% fuel from Sustainable Aviation Fuel. That I do think will be a short, medium-term solution. Hydrogen will be the next, but it's probably in the 40s. decade, so it's going to take a while. But regional aviation will also play a very important part on the sustainability because of that.
Will it be challenging in terms of pricing and for the consumers?
Yes, you want to talk about that? Absolutely. For now, yes. But we believe for now the liter of fuel, a ton of fuel of SAF is 4 times the kerosene or the jet fuel, and it will be a burden on the cost for sure that will have to be passed to the passenger. But as production ramps up, it will decrease the price, I'm sure of that. And we'll have to get there, you know. I do not think electric aviation has a big future. It has a big future on smaller aircraft. Anything above 50 seats, 100 seats, 150 seats, the markets that we serve, the batteries is just way too heavy, and they will not be lighter anytime soon. But again, I think we'll start with regional aviation, all these sustainability, and then
And that can be a trigger also.
Yeah, but can I say to what Valter said? Everyone needs to understand, because everyone says aircrafts pollute. First of all, we are not the heavy polluters of the world. Aviation counts for only 4% of the global the emissions in the EU of CO2. And then the technology that we have at our hands to use is the one that we currently have. So the industry as a whole has the best tools that are available currently in our hands to do it efficiently. Okay, so what we do, we pass into our operations the efficiency of single engine taxiing, or the angle of ascent or descent, or the cruise level. So we are trying to reduce our cost even more, not to pass the entire consumption of fuel to the passengers. You need to be efficient. But we need to pass the message that this industry is working a lot for many years already towards being efficient today. Mm-hmm. And SAF is the next step that the industry is taking on board. And until the manufacturers are safe to do something different with their aircrafts.
Mm-hmm. And Martyn, so this is a double challenge. So because, of course, we have the necessity, but regional flights will be probably, you know, one of the first to explore these kinds of steps, next steps. And so this is a double challenge because the sustainability starts with the companies being sustainable.
Yep.
Also, so in terms of economic sustainability.
Very much so. I think implemented into it, sustainability in multiple ways, right? Of course, the reduction of CO2 emissions, but to do it in a commercially viable as well, so the companies can actually exist without having to seek to be bailed out, ask for breaks. So airlines need to build a sustainable business, and they need to also work on lowering CO2 emissions so we get to net zero by 2050, which we're all buying into. And I think, you know, you talked about the headwinds, the costs of sustainable aviation fuels. We'll also see costs of operation airports going up, I believe, and then also getting sustainable aviation fuels to the airport, the cost of hydrogen when we eventually start bringing hydrogen, whether it's fuel cells or direct hydrogen into the gas turbine. It's not going to be as cheap as it is a Jet A1 at the moment, right? But I think the population is ready for that. I think the population is willing to say, okay, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for a more sustainable, but perhaps I'm not going to fly as much. There could be a curtailing of demand, and again, that means not only will technology come to bear in regional aircraft first, it actually means regional aircraft in terms of capacity will become more and more relevant as well. I mean, say more relevant, if you look now, I think, go back to 2019, there was 200,000 flights a month in Europe with regional aircraft. Okay, that's like 25, 26% of flights. It's very, very relevant. Right? And I didn't talk about connectivity earlier when Vasiliki was saying, but connectivity, we shouldn't get complacent when we look at how good connectivity is, say, in the UK or Germany or France or Spain. Right? We shouldn't get complacent on that. We had this great growth the 5 years prior to the pandemic, you know, up to 2019, we had like 36% improvement in connectivity. Aren't we great? We're still 3 times worse than the United States, right? And we're seeing what's happening now in the macroeconomic situation.
Was it not the agenda?
No. So now we're...
Is it now? Is it now?
Connectivity, very much so, because connectivity directly links to GDP growth, right? Directly links. It's being shown. Like a 10% improvement in connectivity drives like 0.5 percentage points in GDP development, right? You increase the number of flights into a region, you see bigger companies moving into the region. And as Vasiliki talked about earlier, there's a change in the way people want to work, okay? So you're going to attract better talent, more efficient talent that's going to make your company grow faster and be more productive. If you want to be a more attractive employee, you want to have connectivity on where you're based, okay? And your country wants to encourage that connectivity because then you're going to attract the best businesses, you're going to develop your industry better. And I think Europe as a continent wants to encourage that from a regulatory, from a fiscal basis. They want to encourage that connectivity because to me, at the moment, Europe is behind the US when you look at the continent as a whole.
But I'm curious, what type of signs have you seen from regulatory advances or steps that are being done? Is there anything that has been being done by the European Union for one?
In terms of what they're doing, well, I mean, I wouldn't really speak to the airlines, and I wouldn't want to touch on it, but Vasiliki, there's a lot of work going on in Brussels, right?
Yes.
And you see it in terms of the outer regions. We talked about the outer regions.
Yeah, the outer regions are an important element in the EU regulation. So that is well protected through the current regulation that is on the way of amendments. Massive amendments in aviation regulation currently taking place in Brussels. So outer regions, island nations like Cyprus, Malta, and the models of their connectivity, non-island but island-type nations like Greece and the connectivity of regions. So we go into the regional growth scenario then within the regulation to say, no, we're not just supporting an island nation or an outmost region. We need to defend the periphery of Europe and the regions to remain connected. And of course, the Eurocontrol that started separating regional aviation and measuring it as a separate market segment, and there it became evident that it was the only, along with cargo, business that remained stable during COVID, thus signaling that this market is resilient. This market segment does improve the existence of connectivity between the regions. And the growth, it goes with GDP. If you are connected, then you have income, then you have companies, then you have families, then you have schools, hospitals, you have an infrastructure, and you revive the periphery of Europe.
You need a trigger for that.
Train.
Again. So
Yeah.
you need to start it. So someone has to start it.
Yes, someone has to start it. And now in the center of Europe, they perceive themselves as flying is not so good. Let's go into trains. Valter, you won't be flying. You can use a train. So can you use a train from Portugal to connect some place that makes sense to you? So let's stop flying and use the train.
Azores, for instance.
Sorry, Clemente?
I would say Azores, for instance, can you use the plane to go to Azores? Or
Azores, yeah. Or laying tracks.
Not even Madrid, not even Madrid.
Not even Madrid. So when the discussion is out there that instead of focusing on what the manufacturers are trying to do hardly to provide a safe next generation aircraft with hydrogen or whatever, and SAF to ramp up at the production to make it more efficient, they thought it would be a nice alternative to go to train. But that doesn't work for the entire region.
It doesn't work, if I may, it doesn't work. First of all, because a train, to be sustainable economically, needs 1 million passengers per year, from end to end. So it could work for two big cities or cluster, but when you are back to the regions that we are bound to develop, it cannot work. For instance, an ATR is sustainable with 80,000 passengers per year. So you need to go up to 10 ATRs on the same route, Santorini, for instance, but not train because it's the water, to get the train sustainable.
You need to build bridges.
In France, they have this political buzz about having the routes under 250 nautical miles banned if there is a train that is connecting. But first of all, it can work with a high-speed train. Second, where where is all the passenger going to Paris from Bergerac or from Limoges, even Limoges, Paris, you do not have the volumes, you do not have the high-speed train for going there. So let's, and all of this without talking about how trains are really polluting, because where the energy is coming from, and what is the pollution created by a train line from point A, point B. To connect to city, Bergerac to Orly, you need 1,000 meter strip from one side, and 1,000 meter strip from the other side for an ATR. For other aircraft would be...
Get the picture.
For rails, it will be 550 kilometers of rails, cement, steel, all of this to be produced inunding the sky of CO2. All of this is not counted in Brussels.
And the noise it produces.
And don't forget what has actually been done by the industry now. So next generation aircraft are coming onto the market now, are 30% more fuel efficient than the previous generation. We just put our 195E2 in with KLM City Hopper. They've got over 30 more seats than the aircraft they were replacing, over 30 more seats. And yet, lower CO2 emissions per trip with a much bigger aircraft. So it's carbon credit growth they're put into their operation. So there's big strides being made right now. It's not as if the industry is holding its breath and saying, let's wait for hydrogen aircraft in 2040, 2050. It's making real material actions towards reducing CO2. I'd love to see single European skies, things like that, to come in and make a real difference as well. But that's with the politicians. So, but I think the biggest differences you can make now is invest in the new technology, drive down CO2. As an industry, you'll see there's a lot of violent agreement amongst us, right? We're all working together. Competitors, suppliers alike. We have the same vision and goal, the same targets by 2050. We've got different startups working on battery technology, hydrogen technology, how you put hydrogen into aircraft and get it to the airfield. I think the next 20 years could be the most exciting phase for our industry ever in terms of what technology is being brought to bear. How do you utilize a 9-seater or a 19-seater aircraft in your network?
Exactly.
How do you use it? That could actually drive more connectivity as well.
Actually, it is the discussion we want to drive is use the perfect size aircraft for the route, so that you make it viable. Sustainable needs to be the route as well. What could maintain the sustainability of the route over winter, summer season, so that everyone can get the benefit of having the connectivity all days of the year?
That's your concern at Sky?
At Sky Express, we have invested in the new technology aircraft. This is what we did.
Give us an example of what you're saying.
So we could be using, as other airlines do, an Airbus aircraft to go to Santorini. It is a 25-minute flight, 30-minute flight. But if you use an ATR, you can go 14 times a day. You do not interfere with the ATM because you can do VFR. You emit 1/3, or you use 1/4 of the fuel. You emit 1/5 of the CO2 that an Airbus does in a single flight. And you cannot do 14, you can do 1. And you will only do 1 in the summer season, because the slots, the congested airports, the air traffic control, for all those reasons. And you will only go in the summer, whereas we will continue to fly 14 daily in the summer and 7 daily in the winter. Because guess what? The community will remain there because there is good connectivity and they can go back and forth. So you can treat the peaks and go there. And by blending into our operations, so we got ourselves the most efficient new generation aircrafts, which is the traditional technology that the manufacturers have at their hands, but with better engines, consuming less fuel, emitting less CO2. And then we blend into our operations what the Eurocontrol say, try to fly the perfect green flight until everything is ready. So we monitor all that, and we train our pilots, as Portugália does, because it is sustainability on the economic side of the business, right, Valter? Yeah. So trying to do, just to give you a metric, by blending more efficient operations, we managed to emit, in terms of CO2, we were at 0.20 kilogram of CO2 per available seat in 2020, and we managed to reduce that by flying more, same network, bigger even, 0.11 kilo of CO2 per available seat. So which means that there are lots of steps that are taken. And the industry as a whole has signed a pact more aggressive than the European Union on the net zero target, because it is achievable. Is it not, Valter?
I think it's achievable, and we cannot sit and wait for new technology. So like Vasiliki is saying, so there's a lot we can do on the moment. Okay, new technology is a fact, of course, increases the ownership cost, but there's a big trade-off, positive big trade-off. And then we have, operationally wise, we can improve it. But there's something that politicians in Brussels can help us with. Martyn mentioned that a bit, which is the single European skies. We've been talking about single European skies for what, 15 years more? I don't know.
More than that, because I was in Brussels at the time when
Yeah,
the started. And
I don't know.
still.
And worse than that, now it's stalled, basically.
Yeah.
And that alone, with existing technology, existing infrastructure, without new investment, it's 5 to 10% that we could save on emissions. So everybody has to work together. Airlines, manufacturers, airports, Eurocontrol, and the politicians, of course, in Brussels.
In terms of fleet, I'm interested. Vasiliki told us about her experience with Sky Express. In terms of fleet in Portugalia, what is the trend and what are your goals at this moment?
I can't reveal much because I have my main OEM here sitting.
Love our aircraft.
Now, we increased with the aircraft type that Embraer has available in the market that has the lower seat cost possible of the older technology. Of course, we are also looking at new technologies, impossible not to. And sooner or later, we'll go that direction. But I think this new technology, do you reckon that we are seeing the last generation aircraft of the existing technology as of now? And as you said, in the next 20 years, we'll go more into, putting new technologies in.
And I think it will feather in. It won't be a violent
I agree.
Because the supply of green hydrogen, the supply of sustainable aviation fuels will be measured, right? Let's be honest. I think somebody said if we could get 45% of fuel to be SAF by 2050, we need like 5,000 to 7,000 refineries to be built between now and then, right? You think of the investment, all right, to get that by that. So that's just 45% SAF. So it won't be.
But what I want to say is that I think that up to now, the industry was looking about, okay, how do we improve existing technology?
Yeah.
Okay? For decades, we've been doing that. Since the jet operations, turboprops and everything, what can we improve? And now we're looking at what can we do different, not improving the existing one, but putting new
But
fuels.
I think the timelines are interesting, right? So I think when you look at, there's one thing to have an aircraft technologically capable, like in terms of, okay, we flight tested it, and we're looking at our Energia family. We're talking about hybrid electric aircraft, 9-seater by 2030, by 2035, a full electric aircraft, and then a hydrogen fuel cell, and then 2040 hydrogen direct. But you've got to look at the commercial, talk about sustainability, and from a business sense, you've got to have the commercial viability of putting those aircraft in. So I still think to your point, you have to act now to drive in CO2 emissions with the current technology that's out there, or the current new technology that's out there. Act now. Don't wait for next week thinking something's just going to come around in 2028. It's not. And then we'll see how technology evolves, right? Technology has a wonderful way of evolving fast if you put the pressure on it. And maybe that's in the 2030s to 2040, we'll see stuff coming along that hits 70, 80, 90, 100 seat aircraft. But really, I still see current technology, if you will, viable for another
I agree,
20
yes,
years.
of course.
Clemente, let me go to you and understand what is your point in all of this, because you are giving or selling the planes to Sky Express. So when Vasiliki was talking about smaller planes, smaller capacity, is that the way ATR is also aiming and going through?
You mean changing the technology?
Technology and capacity and...
I think that we will stay into a modus at least 50 seats for this kind of a connectivity. I believe that we will be moving to a newer technology sooner than the others because of certain technology advantages. We are already today polluting less the others because we are flying lower levels, because the others jets are flying higher levels, so multiplication effects. But what is interesting in all of this is that we are already sitting on on a technology today that is so efficient that is very difficult to have a step forward. The step forward will arrive probably with SAF, will arrive with the hydrogen, but then this will be working only in certain environments. If you have to deliver logistically the SAF or the hydrogen to Ponta Delgada, what will be the cost? What will be the pollution created by the boat for having this kind of fuel delivered over there? So the transition will be slowly, with aircraft that will be the hydrogen, fully hydrogen aircraft will be flying probably in Germany and France, whilst in the outskirts of Europe, the current technology that is already enormously efficient will continue.
And like things like book and trade may be used to use SAF, so you don't unnecessarily transport SAF to outer regions, but you enable people to be able to use the book and trade system to utilize carbon credits around that.
So to finalize, because our time is...
Can we say the message?
Yeah, please.
We all
Message
share the
each.
same message.
Yes, please.
Connectivity. We need to protect the connectivity of the regions of Europe because this is vital for the sustainability of growth in the European Union, right?
Right.
And in order to do that, don't push the aircrafts out of the lives of the citizens of Europe.
Is there a message for all, or do you want each to send us a
I think
message?
Valter?
I will subscribe that for sure. How can I say this? I mean, if we didn't fly, I mean, not flying is not an option to save the environment. Of course, it reduces the CO2 environment, but people need to fly. And you see, people said that these will never be back to 2019 levels. Actually, Lisbon was one of the very first airports in Europe to be back to 2010 levels passengers, because people wanted to fly. There's no option, and there's no, I would say, anything that can go against it. People need and want to fly. That's a fact. We just need to find ways to do it in a more sustainable way.
Short message, Martyn.
I think the regional aircraft sector has never been more relevant and will grow in relevance as we move forward.
Clemente, I'll finish with you.
Yes, I think that countries like Switzerland has been putting the face and developing in the past thanks to aircraft. We had Crossair with their turboprop aircraft that has been developing the regions in Switzerland. And now it's up to all the regions in Europe and all the regions worldwide to be equipped with the right aircraft, polluting less, having less and less polluting, but keeping connectivity. Without connectivity, again, we cannot leave regions behind. And this is the reason we are working in the board of the Regional Airlines Association, Regions Airline Association, meaning that we have to connect the regions.
Thank you very much to all of you. Vasiliki, Christidi, Valter Fernandes, Martyn Holmes, and Clemente Affinito, our guests for this panel, the stars of this panel. Thank you very much once again. Obrigado a todos.